Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we honor and praise those who are truly making significant differences in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be here. I want to thank Wilkes Communications and RiverStreet Productions and 100.9 WIFM for this opportunity. And our featured guest today is Chris Scott. He's a staff member here at Wilkes Communications and RiverStreet Productions. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with him. And he has a specialty that we'll share today, and it's the drone. It's a new concept, and I've learned a lot about it having this opportunity. And so Chris Scott is a native of Wilkes, a graduate of Wilkes Central High School, and a very wonderful person who has a great story to tell. I'm glad you're with us. So good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about a little bit about growing up here, if you will, and from Boomer.
Yes, was born in I'm from the Boomer area of Wilkes County, and I lived there until I was about 13 years old, and then my family moved down into Moravian Falls, Wilkesboro area. It's a beautiful area. I love it here. My whole family's here. I have a lot of friends here, and I feel blessed to be from such a beautiful area. I truly believe this is one of the most beautiful places, not only in this state, but in the world. It really is. The mountains and.
Chris Scott, tell us your fascination with technology and photography, and this kind of evolved over years, I'm sure. Can give us some idea of the fascination that you have with video and making sure that we share the greatness and beautiful parts of our communities and people.
Well, as technology evolved, as far as digital video and digital photography, photography and video became easier to work with on computers and to edit and to create. And I like to create things, and I started just dabbing around with cameras out of boredom. It's probably 10, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't really know what I was doing much, but the more I toyed and played with it, the more I learned what I was doing. I started figuring out that you could really do a lot of tricks and create spectacular images, as whether it be the stars or the autumn leaves, the lights at nighttime in the town, a sunset, wildlife. And the more I did it, the more feedback I got from it. And I started enjoying it more and more. And I always looked to do more challenging things with cameras and video cameras, and it just kind of started purely out of the spirit of a hobbyist.
Chris, share the picture you shared with me from the Brushy Mountain back north to Wilkesboro, and what a incredible scene that is. Mm-hmm. Share that picture with us.
Well, I was on top of Brushy Mountain Road. It's in the Brushy Mountain community, and I was in the parking lot of Brushy Mountain Baptist Church, I think. And the sunset was going down, of course, in the west, and I took off with a drone, and from already on top of the mountain, I went another 400 feet and captured the most beautiful, spectacular view of all the Brushy Mountains in the fall, and the sunset, and with a view of all of Wilkes County, all of it. And further beyond that too, the view was spectacular.
Right. Let's go to the drone. Mm-hmm. And I want you first to do a military application. Most of us, maybe the first time we heard about a drone was about in Iraq and Afghanistan, and just how does that work?
Well, I think for military usage, those aircraft, unmanned aircraft, have the capability to autonomously fly for hours and hours and miles, and they're used for reconnaissance, even offensive missions with weapons, and basically to mostly reconnaissance missions, and to go into places where I guess the military feels like it would be too dangerous to send a manned aircraft. Those are very large drones. We're talking, 30, 50 feet long, loaded with weapons and all kinds of very sophisticated technology. So they've been around for quite some time. Now, I was watching some videos one day on YouTube, basically, and that's the first time I saw someone just making just a regular, everyday video, a hobbyist, with a drone, which at the time I didn't even know they made consumer drones, but these types of drones are very different than those military drones I just described.
So drone basically starts with unmanned, is that?
Yes,
all right.
An unmanned aircraft.
Unmanned aircraft.
Yes.
So go ahead with your first opportunity to see it, and then you said, well, gosh, I might want to do that. Let's go from there.
Yeah, I was already into making videos as it was. I mean, I used to take GoPros just like this, and I would put them on the front of my car and drive through the snow and wherever I could to get, I always liked interesting perspectives that are very original, that's hard to get to. They were very neat.
That's called a GoPro?
It is. It's a small, waterproof, water-resistant camera that you can basically put anywhere. It comes with all kinds of attachments. So I'd put it on the front of my car and just take off down the road. And I remember the first time I saw an actual consumer drone video on YouTube, I was thinking to myself, all right, that is something that I'm going to have because it's, I couldn't think of a more interesting perspective on things you could get to make a video from.
So you brought one for us this morning?
Yes, I have. This is a DJI Phantom 4 Professional. And this is a very nice camera it comes equipped with.
Can you share the cost of that?
This particular model retails for $1499.99. You can get them from B&H Photo, Best Buy, Adorama Camera, and many other
so
retailers. So
$1,500, you own a drone?
Yes, yes. Which, when looking at the video of this, you might think, well, that's actually a pretty good deal because the video is outstanding. And this thing is actually packed with technology. On the side here, these are side sensors. So it detects objects. So if I were flying around anywhere around here and I came within 10 feet or 5 feet or 10 feet of an object of any kind, whether it's a building, even a power line, a tree, this drone would actually brake itself and stop because it knows that those objects are there. It also has sensors on the back, rear sensors. It also has sensors on the front sensors, and on the bottom. So it comes completely surrounded with sensors. So knock on wood, they're pretty hard to crash.
How long did it take you to learn to fly it?
A lot of YouTube videos.
Okay.
But I remember the first time I flew, it took me about a week before I felt confident in what I was doing with it.
So it takes off from the ground? Is that the way it works?
It does. You just put it on the ground and use your remote and you start it up and just take off. It actually has a GPS system in it, and it can record its GPS geo-satellite location before it takes off. So if no matter what happens, I can turn my remote control off. If I lost signal, if my remote control battery died, if someone came up and snatched my remote and took off with it, no matter what, if that remote dies or goes bad, that drone is going to turn around and come back and land exactly where it took off from. So it's hard to lose. It comes packed with technology to make sure it's safe.
All right, Chris, now I want you to talk about the certification that you have acquired and the FFA or the state. Just give us some idea of that license that you have, lessons and the license you were given.
Well, the Federal Aviation Administration, otherwise known as the FAA, which controls and regulates airspace, when these type of hobbyist aircraft started to appear around 2011, it didn't take long before people had the idea of making money with drones. So the FAA quickly began to make regulations. It's the same entity that makes regulations for manned aircraft, passenger aircraft, everything. And in order to prevent anybody and everyone to go run out and start trying to make money with these, they had to come up with a system to where you had to be certified to use these commercially if you wanted to start a business and do aerial video and photography. And it's called a Part 107 exemption.
Okay.
And
you went to, was it Kansas City to do that?
Salina, Kansas.
All right, Salina, Kansas, all right.
And it was on the campus of Kansas State.
And it took a week or?
A week.
A week?
Polytechnic. Mm-hmm. And it was actually pretty hard. The test is pretty hard. You study weather, you study the characteristics of flight, you study basic FAA rules.
Yeah, I got it.
And you study regulations.
Or now, tell us about the 400 feet and the 4.5 miles and I guess the logistic part of a drone as you're qualified to use it and to take pictures with it. Just tell us about how far and how high and some of those things.
All right. So depending on the model, different models have different ranges as far as how far they can fly. Mm-hmm. This particular drone here can, if I took my remote and just started flying it in a flat surface, if we were in a large field with no mountains or hills and just took off flying it, I could fly it for 4.5 miles.
All right.
As far as the altitude goes, now, technically, I could fly it. This thing could probably go maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet high.
All right.
But the FAA, has regulated that you keep it 400 feet maximum. So you don't want to go higher than 400 feet. I certainly wouldn't want to go higher.
So that's to keep you out of the flight plan, I guess, of airplanes.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I would not, you want to keep it out of anything that could potentially be hazardous to any kind of aircraft whatsoever. In fact, if you're flying one of these and any aircraft appear anywhere in sight. You begin to hear one, the first thing you want to do is immediately land. Because drone pilots always yield under all circumstances to all manned aircraft.
And it's also to stay away from crowds, not being on top of a crowd. Is that right?
Well, one of the FAA regulations is that they don't want you flying over large crowds. Now, you can do it if you get an exemption. You applied for a specific waiver from the FAA, but the main basic rule is you don't fly over large crowds. Now, if someone, say, wanted me to do the Apple Festival here in North Wilkesboro, I could fly around the edge of the crowd as long as I wasn't directly over them and still get spectacular video.
Sure.
Spectacular.
Tell us about a gimbal. That was a word as you were training me to be with you this morning. You said, Gary, there's a gimbal, and I said, well, what is it? And you told me. Tell us about that.
Well, when I first started flying these, I had one of these attached, and that was a DJI Phantom 1. It actually looked similar to this, but it was much less sophisticated. And the way you got pictures and images from it was by taking a GoPro and just screwing it to the bottom. It was as simple as that. Now, I got what I thought at the time were breathtaking images, but they were very shaky.
Shaky.
Yeah, very, very shaky.
Like we call that noise. Is that?
Well, among other things, you would get some noise, which is grain, basically.
There you go. Right.
But mostly, what some people refer to as jello.
Jello.
Because the video would look very wavy, I guess you could say. And I would do certain things to dampen out that waviness. A lot of people would, to try to get a smooth video. Well, I decided one day that it was time to delve deeper into getting smoother video and how I could go about doing that. So I discovered gimbals. And a gimbal is a system at the bottom of your small aircraft that keeps your camera completely stable in the air, no matter how much the aircraft is shaking. So this could be shaking like this, but this gimbal electronically compensates for all movements that the drone makes and keeps it completely steady to make beautiful professional images. So gimbals used to be something that were sold separately. My first gimbal I ordered off of eBay, and I had to install it to the bottom of my Phantom 1. But now these Phantoms come with their own gimbals built in.
Oh my goodness.
They're extremely nice. And Gary, the video on this is more stable than, I don't think it's as stable as if I had this camera sitting on a tripod.
Wow. On a tripod?
On a tripod.
Oh my goodness.
It's so steady that I can be flying this outside on a windy day, and I can take still pictures with it and even long exposure pictures. And the camera will stay completely steady. You can fly this in up to 15 or 20 mile per hour winds, and your video is going to be as steady as if you or I were sitting there holding that camera. It's truly amazing. Chris,
you and your staff were significantly involved in capturing the last Carolina in the fall. Can you give us some idea of the services of RiverStreet Productions and Wilkes Communications as to capturing a wonderful event like Carolina Fall? What were you doing that day?
Absolutely. Carolina in the Fall is a bluegrass festival. It's hosted by the Kruger Brothers. It's held here on Main Street in Wilkesboro. And a part of what we do here is we are involved in the community heavily. and we capture
As
community.
Eric said, you want to be a marketing arm, or this asset belongs to this community, and it will capture the essence, the great things that are going on here. Is that kind of what you said?
Absolutely, just like that, and it's precisely. And we try to get every angle of the event that we possibly can, of course. I don't know if you were aware of this, but Main Street Wilkesboro has undergone some tremendous, incredible renovations,
enhancements.
Yes, and this was the first Carolina in the Fall since these enhancements have happened. We have this new amphitheater.
Yes.
And as we gather everything to organize to capture this event, what better way to look at all these new improvements than from 400 feet high with this beautiful smooth
Let me ask
city
you a
view.
question.
Sure.
Did you say a few moments ago that it will not run into something, it'll stop?
That is correct.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yes. And that's with this newer one. Now they make cheaper models that don't have that technology, but this particular model here does have that technology.
Okay, thank you.
We captured Carolina in the Fall, and we got all those new enhancements in the video. And it's a deal where there's crowds.
Yeah.
So what I did was I just flew on the edge of downtown Wilkesboro and got all that event from.
Like the perimeter then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You could see all the people, all the food trucks, all of downtown Wilkesboro. You could see all of downtown Wilkesboro and North Wilkesboro and the river, and it just puts everything into perspective. So it was really good. It turned out nice.
I'm involved with my wife with Vintage Rose Wedding Estates, and we did an ad on the back of a wedding magazine here last month, and I've been taking pictures for 30 years, and nothing I've ever done compared to this drone. The shots in front of our chapel, and just amazing how it just gives it a touch of explain that to us.
Well, it's all about perspective, for photographers and videographers. And, people have always dreamed of being able to get a perspective or a photograph from a place that no one else has ever gotten them.
Right.
The first time I flew one of these and put them in I took the images off the memory card, put it in my computer, and looked at what I had just recorded. My friend looked at me and was like, are you all right, Chris? And I was just amazed at how I just couldn't believe that I had just videoed that and that it looked like that. And that's the way it looked. So for weddings, people want unique visuals.
Yeah.
And people love drones for, post-ceremony applications. And, it's the bird's eye perspective. And the images are also neat too, because, although helicopters and airplanes have gotten images and videos from the sky for years, they can't really go right over the treetops like these can. So that's where a lot of the really interesting perspectives are that no one has ever gotten.
Yeah.
Is right on the treetop. So
I'd always thought of, well, how would it look from up there? And now in the magazine, the back page, there we are, and I'm saying, my goodness. It's a dimension, isn't it? Isn't that a good way to describe it? It's a dimension that we didn't have before.
We didn't. And even if you did get an aerial shot, whether that's a movie or an event, it would have costed you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. For instance, to come down to maybe if you wanted a shot of 100.9 WIFM from the sky, it would be a big deal to get an aircraft, to a helicopter or a manned airplane to fly in and take a picture of that from the air. 10 years ago, that would have been an extraordinary undertaking. When I could actually come down there and do that for free for you today. So it's that easy, it's that simple.
Chris Scott, let's go through some of the applications that folks might not have thought about. You said a real estate agent who wants to show a property from 5,000 or 4,000 feet or 400 feet. Just go through some of the things at the treetop where we couldn't do before.
Oh, there are several practical applications for consumer drones and prosumer drones. Real estate agents showcasing the acreage of a property.
Yes.
You know, if you have 300 acres for sale, and what better way to show it and showcase it than a beautiful shot from 400 feet?
Yeah.
Or a farmer that is looking to be as efficient with their property as possible as far as the way they're using it, or want to organize their property. Fire departments looking for, you know, checking for forest fires, looking for places that are still burning. You can put thermal imaging sensors on these to, you know, you can see heat. Wildlife officers. The list goes on and on. There are many, many practical applications for these.
A roofer.
Absolutely.
He wants to see a roof of a home, and he can kind of give an estimate by just seeing it from top down.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the image on these are so good.
So clear.
So clear.
So steady.
So steady that Gary, it would be like if you climbed up on a roof and took this camera and just sat there and held it onto the roof. Yeah. It's that clear. So roofers
on a tripod.
On a tripod.
Yeah, that's how constant that is. Just no motion.
Absolutely. I know a roofer personally. He's here in town, and he owns 3 of these, and he uses them almost every day.
The power supply. You said it's 23 minutes in a battery, but then you can replace them. Tell us about that.
The company that manufactures my particular drone here is called DJI, and it comes with a lithium-ion battery. It's 5,000 milliamps. They advertise 30 minutes. But what you realistically get is about 23 minutes in the air. And this is the battery. It comes out the back here, and you can press.
So you can bring it back in and put in a fresh one.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. And you might think to yourself, 23 minutes? That's not that long. Well, actually, if you think about it, 23 minutes in the air is actually a great bit of time.
Right.
And if you have 4 batteries, that's a lot of time in the air.
Right.
So they just go back in the back like that, and you can check to see the amount of voltage you have left by these bars here. This particular model will fly about 23 minutes, but there are some that'll fly up to an hour. And then there's some that'll fly as little as 10 minutes. The first one of these I had about a 7 to 10 minute flight time. There were some times when I only get about 7 minutes. That's still a good bit of time, but not nearly as long as these.
Thank you for the enlightening sharing we've had today. And I want to thank Wilkes Communications for the opportunity that I've had, and RiverStreet Productions and WIFM. Your future in working with drones, just a short little moment of this fascination that you have with it.
Well, I'm guessing that they're going to get a lot easier and a lot safer. Drone manufacturers want to emphasize safety, and it's important to know that these are safe to fly, and not only the pilot safety, but spectator safety and just everyday safety of these will continue to improve. The camera quality will continue to improve, and that will allow us to keep on getting better and better, new perspectives and new images.
So if someone has a question, they can call you here, Chris Scott at RiverStreet Productions, and you'll help them with, if you have a question, we'll find the answer. How's that?
That is correct.
Thanks for honoring WIFM and RiverStreet and Wilkes Communications, and we hope to do this again. Thank you.
Gary, it's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.